Close enough.
Oh, here's the mic.
There's the mic, yeah.
Thank you for coming. I fell in love with Emily in 1942. She was a saint whom I had the wonderful good fortune to marry in 1944 and remained married to for over 70 years. We met at a Valentine's Day dance in 1942. She was a Simmons freshman and I a Harvard senior. That April, I took her to an Elliott House formal dance at which she was radiant in an off-white strapless evening gown with ostrich feathers at the breast. I fell madly in love, a state which has continued since. Indeed, about that time, I bet my college roommate $5 that I would marry her. And 2 years later, I collected that back. I described Friday how my meeting and falling in love with her was directly responsible for my going to medical school, something I had never previously considered. Her college years were dominated by World War II. She was very active in Russian war relief, translating for Soviet visitors at public meetings, and often speaking at them herself. After I finished medical school in April '46, we moved to New York for my internship and residency. After working briefly at the new American Soviet Medical Society, she decided to get a graduate degree in Russian at Columbia. This was right after the war, and Columbia was where most of America's leading Soviet scholars for the next 2 generations got their training. The only native Russian speaker in the group, she recorded for them in writing, in English, the lectures in Russian by one of their major professors. After receiving her master's degree, she worked as secretary to the department head. Had she gone on for a doctorate, she would have become one of America's leading Russian experts. But in 1948, I was called back to the Army, as we knew would happen, and we spent 2 years in Kansas. The most positive aspect of that period was the birth, after 5 years of marriage, of our oldest son, Leonard. How can one choose what to say about the 70-year marriage of 2 people so deeply in love? I can say that the experience made clear to me the nature of schizophrenia, and particularly its cure, something which psychiatry has long been fruitlessly researching. In 1963, at the age of 40, I was hospitalized for acute schizophrenia. I had been subjected to a host of simultaneous attacks from various directions after having been publicly very critical of some activities of the Roman Catholic Church. Whatever happened, I was wondering if it was deliberately intended. I became increasingly suspicious and disorganized, which was particularly troublesome in our marriage, since Emily and I had always been so close. The many psychiatrists I saw were at best useless. In November '63, on the recommendation of my cousin, endocrinologist Louis J. Sofer, MD, I was voluntarily admitted to the psychiatric service at New York's Mount Sinai Hospital. Safe in the hospital, I recovered quickly. After 2 weeks, I got myself taken off drugs. I ran for a mile every day in the hospital gym. I resumed playing my violin. I wrote a psychiatric review of the medieval witchcraft epidemic. None of these factors were recognized in my chart by the doctors caring for me, nor was the major factor in my recovery my blessed Emily, who kept the home fires burning and visited me regularly. The cause of my breakdown was exposure to important conflicting social stimuli. The cause of my recovery was protection and the unflagging love of a good woman. Although these central elements of major psychiatric disorder and treatment were fully recognizable 50 years ago, the specialty, preoccupied with drugs, has continued to downplay them. There is much more I can say about Emily and our 2 other wonderful children, Paul and Betty. Her personal warmth, which welcomed so many friends, relatives, and new acquaintances to our Roslyn home. Her work as a librarian at C.W. Post for 28 years. The wonderful trips she and I took over the past 30 years. Political activism, the peace marches, ban the bomb campaign, mobilization against the Vietnam War. How can one summarize an eventful marriage of 70 years in a few short minutes? Lord Byron wrote a poem called Maid of Athens.
Oh.
I changed it a little bit. Dame of Amsterdam.
Oh my.
Dame of Amsterdam, ere we part, give me back my heart, or since that has left my breast, take it now and keep the rest. Hear my vow before I go, Zoe move, my adored. Sasagapo, I love you. I would like to end by telling how Emily and I often closed the day. When we got into bed, her hands were almost always cold, while mine were usually warm. When I took hers in mine, she would purr with pleasure.